Is Harry and Meghan's decision to step back as senior royals petulant and ill-judged?
Right, so that was a comment, petulant, ill-judged, in the Times, I believe, in a Times editorial today. Megxit, as it's been dubbed now, inevitably. Clive, where do you stand on this?
No, it isn't. I think, first of all, I'd say about Meghan Markle, she's been a breath of fresh air for our monarchy. She's been a role model, inspirational. Her work with charities, in particular with the victims of Grenfell, has been outstanding. And I think the way that she has been treated by our media is a little short of disgraceful. And quite frankly...
In what in particular, think
Well,
you?
I think Prince Harry himself has said that he thinks that there is a large degree of racism in terms of how she's been treated. It's been quite appalling. I mean, he's obviously pointed to what's happened in South Africa and the tour and the royal correspondents who have been reporting. And he also said something about the fact that sometimes what's being said has been so far from the truth, and yet because it has come from those royal correspondents, it's been repeated around the world. Now, anyone that's in the public eye in this country knows that that happens far too often in our media.
I think what he said was royal correspondents reporting, and then that would get misreported.
It would get misreported. It would get misreported, but they were basing it on what was said by those royal correspondents. But let's be quite clear and quite frank here. I think it's up to them in the 21st century, if they wish to step back from their royal duties. I think given what it has done to them, given the pressure and the stress, if you've ever been in the public eye and you've been in the eye of a media storm, and a multiple media storm, let's not forget Prince Harry's mother was harassed severely, Princess Diana, by the media. He has seen this before. It has had a massive impact on his life. And now it's happening to his wife. I think he has every right, and she has every right, to step back from public life and do as they see fit. And I also think as well, look, Meghan Markle is one of the most privileged people in this country. And yet look at what our media is doing to her and Prince Harry. It is completely unacceptable. And I think that they have every right to make the decision that they have.
And do you think it's just the media that is making them do this? I mean, I was looking through their website today and they explain their reasoning in some detail. They want to live a different kind of life as well.
Yes, they do, but I think we have to take into account that this probably wouldn't happen, and it is speculation on my part, but this probably wouldn't have happened if there hadn't been such negative coverage from the British media. I mean, this is the same British media that is meant to be the fourth estate, meant to hold power and the public to account. It's meant to be fair, it's meant to be balanced. It's anything but. And I think what you can see in the way that she has been treated as a member of the royal family is a little short of a disgrace as far as I'm concerned. And I think she has every right, and Prince Harry have every right, to do what they've done. As for the issue of warning Her Majesty about this, well, I personally feel that's a family matter between them. I understand that Her Majesty may be upset about that, but ultimately that's a family matter, and I don't think I would want to delve into that.
Max?
I agree with about half of what Clive said. I think that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry deserve tremendous sympathy because it is hell being royal. It is incredibly difficult being royal. I don't buy the view that it's all racist. If one remembers, you mentioned Diana. I was a newspaper editor at the time that Diana was in the eye of the storm, and an awful lot of royals have had a very bad time, you can argue from the media, without the issue of race being brought into it. But I also
the question, Max, is was their decision petulant and ill-judged?
I also feel very sorry for the Queen in all this, that here is she in her 90s facing more of these family storms. And I think one of the problems that perhaps because she has lived at such a great age, nobody's got to grips with the issue of what is the royal family supposed to be. And the idea, I think Prince Charles is dead right to talk about a slimmed-down royal family, in which the state is not expected, yes, to pay $2.4 million for Prince Harry's house, in which there is a clear understanding of what is and is not expected of lesser royals. And we're all arguing all the time. I think they're the victims of this in some degree because nobody has told them explicitly just what is and is not expected of them. So they deserve sympathy, but Prince Charles, William and the Queen deserve sympathy in all this. But I hope that they'll keep talking. What one does hope is there's obviously a hell of a row going on in that family, and the worst thing that could happen is if they end up on non-speakers. They've got to keep talking. They've got to see a way through this. And one hopes it will be a happy one, not only for Meghan and Prince Harry, but also for the Queen and the future of the monarchy, which some of us care passionately about.
The man in the check shirt.
Would their seeking financial independence not have been better before the multi-million-pound renovation of Frogmore Cottage?
Yes, they're talking about living financially independently. Let me just take another question here at the front. You had your hand up with this rhetoric.
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy to see them live their own life, do whatever they want. They're humans like we all are, but yeah, shouldn't they immediately stop taking public money as they step down instead of, I think they said today, move towards that?
Yeah, so what have they said exactly? They said they will work to become financially independent. I mean, who pays for the royals? It's certainly in terms of their security, something that comes under your aegis, Brandon.
Yes.
So are you happy if they step back from their role as senior members of the royal family? Are you going to keep paying for their security?
Well, I'm sure you won't be surprised. I'm not going to be able to comment on the
Well, you're Security Minister.
No,
Come on.
But it's inappropriate for me to comment on how we deal with security issues for any protected person, whether they are a member of the royal family or otherwise protected.
But surely you can tell us whether or not you'd be happy to keep funding it.
No, all protection for the royal family otherwise is done on a risk-assessed basis. It's done independently. It does come within my remit, but I think it would be, I'm afraid it just would be inappropriate for me to comment on how we arrange and what we do for security for protected people. But look, what I would say, and this is where there is an element of agreement between Clive and Max and certainly myself, would be that I agree with the point Clive pointed out at the beginning, which is I think that Harry and Meghan and the royal family generally do amazing work for this country and particularly for charitable and good causes as well. We should be, we're very lucky. I'm very proud to be in a country where we've got a royal family like that. But ultimately, I think Max's point is also right around the fact that this is ultimately a matter for the royal family. And I hope we end up in a position where the royal family get a result that's good for them and also good for the country, because one of the things we have seen throughout the history of our country is that the royal family has evolved over the centuries and over the generations to reflect the country as it is at that given time, and I'm sure we'll continue to see that. But ultimately, this is a matter for the royal family.
And can you see a situation where Harry and Meghan are living independently but are still part of the royal family? Can you see that? I mean, some would see that as a contradiction in terms. Can you see that working?
Well, as I say, we've got to wait and see exactly what the royal family want to do and where they want to go with this. And I think it would be difficult to prejudge what they might do. But we should also be clear that the royal family is not just funded through the public purse. The royal family also has funding through the family itself and their own interests.
Anne, I saw you shaking your head in some frustration when Clive was talking.
A little bit, but let me start with the position of the Sussexes. I think it depends whether their aim is still to be in the royal family or not. I mean, they said they didn't want to be senior royals, but that's a somewhat different question.
Well, they say they want to continue to collaborate with the Queen,
right?
And support,
well,
royal
it's
charities
not
and the Commonwealth.
menu. I think that's the slight problem, that you have a model of the royal family, and I do think a slimmed down royal family is where we need to head. I think Prince Charles was right about that. That is now happening by necessity, not by choice. But the question is then, what is the role of those who, if you like, are in the outer core? They are an attractive couple. They have brought a breath of fresh air to the royal family. I interviewed Meghan Markle along with a panel of other people last year. I found her very, very engaging, professional to work with. I liked her focus on subjects like girls' education worldwide. I liked the fact that she had an international dynamic to what she brought to it. But you can do a lot of that from a different platform. And if you want to stay somehow connected to the royal family, being a semi-demi-royal with a bit of time at Frogmore Cottage and a lot of it in North America is going to be very difficult to pull off. It's going to need to be very strategic. Max Hastings said, I think quite rightly, it's going to have to be done by agreement. It can't be done by an exchange of hostile communications as we've had in the last day or so. So something's gone badly wrong. It may be salvageable, but it does need thinking through. The reason I disagree with Clive is, look, I mean, we talk about the media and poor coverage. Yes, it must be very bruising to get coverage you don't like. Sometimes that even happens to politicians.
Can I mention
too.
one brutal point?
Just very quickly, Max, what I was about to say is, if you look, I think most coverage, including the broadcasters, is very, very positive in the UK. We often don't report a lot of things that people say when they don't like the royals. So I think that you have to calibrate it, and they have to roll with that if they want to still be connected to the firm.
One short, brutal point about money. That one issue that is going to face the Sussex, if they do step down, is that they're going to find an awful lot of people, especially in North America, who want to give them money, but they are absolutely the worst sort of people whom probably most of them they should not be taking money from. And this issue...
You mean in terms of commercial endorsements, that kind of thing?
Well, there are, whether it's lending them yachts, whether it's all the people who are most eager to hang around royals are almost ipso facto the people who the royals shouldn't let them hang around. And how they overcome that problem is going to be very difficult for them.
Miatta, one thing that occurs to me, this idea of growing financial independence. We've seen that before. I'm thinking of the Countess of Wessex, for example, TV production company, the PR company, and in the end the Queen ended up giving them money so they wouldn't be doing that any longer. Can you see that working?
So I think you can see it working, and I think it's just a question of imagination, a question of will. And at the end of the day, for me, I have a lot of sympathy for Harry and Meghan. I think they've been given a really rough ride. You just have to look at some of the coverage overnight around their decision, which has been really vile and excessive, to see that actually it's been hugely unfair. And I think, in part, it's because Meghan doesn't conform to what some people expect a royal should look like, should act like. And so she's been given a really tough time. And I think it's wrong, and I think it's really sad. And so, I think they're a young family. They've literally just had a baby. That's pretty tough in its own right. And they're under a huge amount of pressure. They've been really honest about, how unhappy they are, about mental health issues that they're struggling with. And I say, they had a break and they decided we want to change things. We want to focus on ourselves and our kid. And I think they're completely right, and I say fair play to that. But I do think it shines a spotlight yet again on the royal family, on the monarchy. And, I think that, the monarchy are part of our culture, our tradition, our history, but it needs to be reformed and it needs to be brought back into the 21st century. And for me, that means both constitutional reform, so that we're no longer a nation of subjects, but we're a nation of citizens, through to the fact that it needs to be scaled down so that they're less royals, and the fact that we have this very privileged, very wealthy family that should be financially independent, but also actually wealth that they have accumulated through centuries, that they have inherited. They should be giving it back, some of it back, to the public, because in the end, it belongs to us.
Two hands up in front. Yes, the one in the Cardi first, then I'll come to you, sir.
Isn't the truth of the matter that everybody now looks on the monarchy as a bargain, and unless we get our pound of flesh from the press and in terms of how much money they bring into the country, nobody actually believes that that family should be allowed to rule the country as right. We all look at it as a transactional arrangement now.
And do you think we're wrong to do that?
No, I think, well, in a way, I think we're wrong, but I think also the transaction is in terms of how many stories would they give to the press. The press turned on Meghan when she stopped providing so many photo opportunities for the baby, and very quickly they turn on her. And I think we like to see a soap opera. We like to be provided with entertainment. And if we don't get that entertainment, the country only is governed by our agreement, and we feel we have to get value from them as entertainment as well as money being brought into the country. Well,
certainly the royal family provided acres of coverage in the last couple of months, in particular. Yes, the man here in the yellow
I'm
shirt.
inclined to agree with Max, actually. My sympathy goes to Her Majesty. Last year she had to put up with what happened to Prince Andrew, and she had
that can't have been a good day at the palace.
And then it's a tough time for her. And 2019 has been a very tough time, and her husband was in the hospital, and now this sudden breaking news about her grandson. I think what Harry should have done is he should have actually come back from his holiday from America and Canada, and then taken his time, perhaps gone to the Queen. He did go to Her Majesty when he actually decided to marry Meghan. He did ask her, and she gave consent. What he should have done is gone to, Windsor Castle or Buckingham Palace, had a chat with his grandmother, and then discussed what his intentions are, so that all the protocol could be followed, and then he could have had a press release. But he preempted and went and gave a press release.
I mean, there are reports tonight, I can't verify one way or another, that the Queen was aware to some extent of what was going to be announced today. We just don't know, do we?
Well,
Whether or not a conversation
I do
was had.
agree with Clive. The British media have actually, literally tortured them. And he is frightened. I mean, he has seen what his mum went through. And he doesn't want his wife to go through that. So he's made that decision, which I think is too preempted and too early.
The man here in the cap.
Yes, I admire them for having the courage to come out and say what they've said and what they wish for. I have got adult children with families, and if I started to try to tell them what to do, I think I would be out of order, and they would also. And also the question of Frogmore, if they didn't occupy that, perhaps they'd give it to the homeless.
Right, fair enough. Can I just ask out of interest, is there anyone in the audience who thinks that Harry and Meghan have done the wrong thing? Not a single hand up. That's really interesting. I had no idea how this conversation was going to go, but that's very interesting indeed.